Hey, hello, Felix. Hello, Scarlett. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you, Jorge?
Pretty good, pretty good. I see you smiling. You're happy. That makes me happy. So,
Trying
what?
fast.
Yeah. What day is it today? What are we planning to do here together?
Write some open source software, or at least plan it.
Plan it. Yeah, we have no idea what we're doing. So, Scarlett, can you tell us a little bit more about like this event?
Yeah, so this event is a follow-up from our event that we held a couple weeks ago, where we talked about tips on contributing to open source, talking about things like opening issues, pull requests, and what that looks like. So today we're hoping to actually go through and build something that's open source and show a little bit of behind the scenes, how that works, how Felix and Jorge collaborate together, and really just write some code.
Then write some code in front of everyone.
Pressure is on.
Pressure is on.
Fingers crossed, knock on wood, all the stuff. So, Felix, can you tell me a little bit more about what we've been talking about doing, but literally we have no idea about how to do it?
Yeah. So one of the projects that we've been using and maintain through the Chicago Flutter organization is this thing called LCOV, and it's basically a GitHub action which allows us to automate maintaining code coverage in our projects. And it's really simple. You basically just specify the minimum coverage percentage that you want, and then you can integrate with GitHub Actions, and your CI will fail if your code ever drops below a certain percentage. But the downside is we're using a Dockerized GitHub action, which right now limits users to only being able to use a Linux Docker container when running this. And so the request has been made by members of the community, and we also think it makes sense to kind of remove that obstacle and allow it to be used by anyone, regardless of what OS you're running GitHub Actions on. So that's kind of what we've been talking about, and we're trying to figure out how to best tackle it.
So, wait.
This is important because
Yes.
testing is super important, right?
Yeah.
And we believe that code coverage, if it's below 100%, there's some vulnerabilities there. There could be some issues down the road. So hopefully this will be helpful for us, but also, part of the reason why we want to open source this and make it easier for people to use is because it will be useful. It will, help you reach that 100% code coverage in your project, like what we strive.
And maintain it, yes.
I really like that idea of like, yeah, it is first of all like useful for us, but because we think that like, hey, we use this and like we see that the community can benefit from it, like why not open source it, right?
And someone already requested this, right?
Yeah, this was a community request. It's been requested a while ago, and we just haven't had time to tackle it. We've been talking here and there about how we might approach it, but now it's finally time
has come
to actually sit down and do something about it. Yep.
So before we jump into the unknown, like we've been talking like about like we have a Docker container and we need to change the Docker container because it only works on Linux. So exactly what do we have in the LCOV code for Chicago Flutter, and what's the plan? Like, are we planning to create a new version? Are we planning to deprecate and start like over with a different component? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, all good questions. So the functionality that currently exists is basically the action will assume that you've already run your code coverage step in your CI and that you have that generated output file. And then all the action does right now is just basically check. It interprets that file and makes sure that whatever threshold you've set is actually adhered to. And it allows you to do some nice things like excluding certain files. But other than that, it's pretty basic. And so what we've been talking about doing and the kind of strategy that we want to take is to deprecate the existing one and create a brand new action under Very Good Ventures and call it Very Good Coverage. And that will allow us to have a clean slate, surprise, yeah. It will allow us to start with a clean slate. It won't be like a very disruptive change. And then we can also talk about adding potentially new features on top of it, such as maybe generating the code coverage report as well, so you have a nice visual reference. And some other cool stuff if we have time.
Perfect. So we've been talking about like working with coverage. In this case, is LCOV, right? That is kind of like a standard tool that you can use like in languages that are not actually taught, like JavaScript or like Java or whatever, right? So is this gonna be this project just tied to Flutter projects, or can we use it in our I don't know, like Nest.js microservices or something like that.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely not tied to just Flutter. Anything that generates an LCOV report will work with this. And yeah, that's the beauty, like you mentioned, JavaScript, C++, all kinds of different projects with different languages will all benefit from having this tool. So it works well with Flutter, but it will definitely also solve your test coverage issues with other languages and projects as well.
That's great. I'm really excited to tackle this project personally because, as you two know, like JavaScript wouldn't be my language of choice. I like it, but also not having types kind of like gives me the chills. But I know that you, Felix, like you are really experienced with JavaScript, for example, right? So every time we do something together with JavaScript, I learn a lot. So I'm very, very excited for that opportunity to keep making mistakes and for you to tell me like, Jorge, be careful, don't do that.
We'll see. We have to wipe the dust off. I haven't written a lot of JavaScript recently, so yeah, hopefully it'll be a good time. And we're actually gonna, I think we're gonna try at least to use the TypeScript GitHub Actions starter. So we should still have some types. Yeah.
Oh, then if it's TypeScript, I got it. Like I can do it by myself. I don't need you guys. See ya.
Okay, so we know what we're gonna do, right? We know what we're gonna call it. Very good.
The hardest part. What are you gonna call it?
Very good coverage.
And it's going to live in the Very Good Ventures.
Yeah, VG Ventures.
Organization.
Awesome. Sounds like a solid plan.
Yeah, what we need to do now.
So before we jump into the code, I know that we're trying to use this event to not only write code, right, but also like to participate with the community and things like that. So before we jump into the code, Scarlett, will you help us to realize what are the ways that we can contribute with the community beyond just the coding part?
So you can actually check out our website and our blog, and there are some steps that we talked about in our last meetup in terms of contributing to open source, how to get started, how to open an issue. Just to recap some of those things, though, here really quickly, you can really contribute to open source in a number of ways. You can weigh in on existing issues on your favorite libraries or packages. So today, if you're looking at, what we build, you can see our progress, open an issue, or if someone, opens an issue, comment, like something, things like that. You can also, write your own issues, open your own issues that hopefully lead to PRs, maybe lead to changes in the code. You could build something from scratch, whether it's a package or a GitHub action like we're doing today. You can also just serve as a mentor to the community. So if you have experience with open source, maybe you don't want to write the code necessarily, but you can help somebody else who's trying to get started or trying to look for ways to contribute. So those are just, a few of the ways. Again, you can check out our blog. We have lots of tips there. You can also just check out Felix and Jorge's work. They're pretty active members of the open source community. So those are good places to get started.
That's a good point. Actually, another thing that I'm just like thinking that we've never discussed before, but like GitHub offers like a sponsorship for many projects. So if there's a library that you or your company use a lot and you think that is critical for your mission and critical for the product, right? Like I would strongly suggest that you actually try to sponsor, and like even a single penny, it means the world for these supporters, right? If you have more and you can contribute with more, great. But like a lot of these packages, a lot of these libraries that like they're like again essential for your product, they're done like in the free time, right? Like not even like as part of a regular job. So like that sponsorship goes a long way. So
right. The open source community really is unpaid at its core, right? This is all work we're doing in free time. We're open sourcing it because we think people are into it. Maybe, you're doing it as part of work because you're using this tooling. But yeah, you bring up a good point. Sponsoring is a really easy and quick way to show your support, to maybe give back a little bit to some of these creators and contributors who are contributing their time, their effort to really make software that makes the world a better place.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the ultimate goal.
Reputation. You can also hopefully be able to actually make it. I know a lot of people, their dream is to just be able to maintain open source software full time. So you can potentially help make that a reality. Yeah.
All right, so that's it. Let's jump into the scary part, the coding.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Very Good Open Source. So today we are going to get started coding. So first things first.
Finally.
First things first, we are going to start by cloning the repo using an existing GitHub Actions template, and we're going to be working in the Very Good Ventures organization on GitHub. So let's dive into the code and get started. Woo!
Thank you. Share your computer. You want to do the
Yeah,
leading?
let's do the honors. Yeah, but you need to give me access, Jorge.
Oh my. How do I do that?
There we go.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Zoom is hard.
Zoom is
Zoom
hard.
is hard.
All right. So it seems like we're
Happen to have
action.
Yeah, I just happen to have this URL in my browser.
Perfect.
So yeah, so we basically went to the GitHub Actions organization on GitHub, and they have this nice JavaScript action template, which we're going to clone. And it looks like it comes with basic stuff like support for testing and some like boilerplate for a simple GitHub action that just gives you a nice greeting, I think it is. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and click use this template. As we mentioned, we are going to do this under Very Good Ventures and call this Very Good Coverage. Quick, we need a description. Actually, should we come back to the description? Or does anyone have a good one again? I'm always terrible at descriptions.
We could use like a helper that enforces coverage requirements on your GitHub Actions template or something. No, not template. Pipeline.
GitHub action, which helps enforce coverage. What did you say? Coverage threshold?
Yeah. English is always hard for me.
Using LCOV, something like that. All right, cool. Do we want to start off public, private?
Let's make it private because
Let's
then
keep it private.
For now.
Keep
Cool.
the surprise until we premiere.
All right.
The nice thing about templates, right? It's kind of like they're gonna bring that repository back into our repository. So we start with a lot of things already ready for us.
Yep. And we can, yeah, keep it up to date as you mentioned. So we got it all set up. Let's clone it.
So before we get started, there's a reason why we clone the JavaScript option and not the TypeScript option. We already went through that process and we found a few roadblocks. So this is Plan B version 2.
Yes, but that's a good point. Sometimes you start working on something and you think you have a solution and it, is more complicated or just doesn't work out. So
yeah, we can always pivot in the future and switch over to TypeScript if needed. At this point, we figured it wasn't worth it since it's such a simple action. So
yeah, we just want to get it working so people can use it.
However, here's the challenge for the community. We have recorded part of those videos. If we get 100 retweets when we announce this video, we might release those videos in the form of bloopers.
just one giant blooper.
Ooh,
Yeah.
good proposition. Yeah, for sure. We need to do something with the footage. So
I'm a magician creating hype. All right, so what do we have here? It's a node module, right? So that's why we have this package.json file.
Yep. And we have one dependency on Actions core, which is like the main NPM package, which we'll be using to interact with the GitHub Actions SDK. There's some dev dependencies for linting, testing, and bundling. And we'll come back and fill out all of the information about the action later on, like the name and description. The main things that I was looking at are what scripts it comes with. So we have a lint script, a prepare script, which does the build step, a test script, and then it looks like we can run all of those in one command, which is cool. So I'm gonna just run. Oh, first thing we gotta do is npm install. Don't forget to run npm install to pull in all the dependencies.
If you're coming from Flutter, this is kind of like Flutter pub get or packages get.
Yep, exactly. And if I refresh, now we have our node modules. And now we should be able to run npm run all, and hopefully it's all green. Yep. So we have a few basic tests, and we also have a test workflow here, which do you want to try opening a PR just to make sure that this is all working properly? Or
Yeah,
I guess
we should try to do that.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna just check out a new branch. We can, do you want to just do like a test branch, or should we actually call it like, I guess we can do a real branch, right? Where we take like the input step and like try to tackle that.
Yeah, I think that's what we should do. We can modify the action.yaml. By the way, you have a colon at the beginning of the branch name.
Have a what?
Like I never know, a quote, single quote. Yeah.
Oh, I always do that. I think, isn't it legal both ways? I don't know. All right, so we got lcov path input. Yeah, cool.
So what we're gonna do is because our GitHub action is gonna have an API in which we can pass what's the path of the lcov report, right? We're gonna make sure that exactly we already can use this as an example.
Yeah. So we are trying to keep it as similar to the previous action as possible. And yeah, the inputs on the previous one included the file path, the coverage threshold, and then any files that we want to exclude. So yeah, we were going to start by just adding support for the file path. And we can do that just by basically taking this bit from our existing action and updating the actions.yaml file. So instead of taking milliseconds as input, we will take a path as input. It's optional. It defaults to like a safe default for a lot of projects. You don't have to specify it if you're just using the default coverage configuration. And yeah, now go ahead. Right? Oh yes, the outputs. I guess we don't have any outputs right now, so we can probably just remove the outputs altogether. And let's call this very, does it have to be? Let's see the name. I guess I'll just stay with the invention. Yeah. And then I guess if
description, right?
Yeah. Good call. Cool. So now more or less we have the equivalent, like a very stripped down version of the previous one. We can add branding and stuff later.
What is
the branding is when you publish this on the market, it's what this little icon looks like. So you have like some flexibility of how to customize, and like you can control the color and icon and stuff, so you can make it a little personalized and like tailor it to kind of what the action is doing. It's not super flexible, but at least you can choose from a bunch of different colors and icons. So kind of nice. You do? All right, cool. Oh, you didn't have any idea? Yeah, it's a cool thing that like hopefully they expand it to more options in the future. But yeah, otherwise everyone's action would just look the same and it'd be boring. Cool. So yeah, we have the action.yaml. I think that looks good. So now let's come over and we can wipe out the existing script. We no longer need this wait. And then let's see. So instead of getting milliseconds from input, we can get the lcov path, right? And then instead,
what we pass in get input needs to match the value that we just added into actions.yaml, right?
Yep.
It's that value, okay.
Mm-hmm. And we can just debug it, and probably that's good enough for now. Yeah, so yeah, let's just see. Let's start there, right? And we can probably go ahead and modify the tests. So we don't need this invalid test. We don't need this wait 500 milliseconds test. We probably want to keep this test runs. So here we need to probably modify the environment variables to have the path. I guess this is the convention where it's like all caps with input underscores the prefix. Here we could do lcov.info. Let's just do,
That is just a value.
Yeah, that seems fine, right? Let's actually maybe extract this. Lcov path. And that way we can reference it when we have this expectation. So IP, I guess this is used to get the path to the executable, and then it's executing node with the path. And it's passing the environment variable, which contains the lcov path option. And yeah, so now this is just logging it. So let's try running. Oop, and we already have an error. Weight is assigned. Oh yeah, did not see that. So we removed weight because we don't need that anymore. The test passes and it's logging that. So why don't we do final actual and get that value? Oops, final. Dart.
And,
yeah, exactly. And then is it expect?
No,
it's
so
a search.
Why? I forgot the syntax. It was like this to be equal to that. Expect maybe?
Yeah. I thought it was expect.
Then I said
we might need to import
there's no gin.
Yeah. This is the lack of types. But I think it is expect. Let's try it. So expect actual to equal, and then let's do expected, and we know that this is the expected, and from previous experience we know that there's a new line at the end. And oops, I can't type, and let's try this again. So all we're doing is instead of just printing, we're actually making the test a little more strict. Hey, it worked. And making sure that the output is actually what we expect, as opposed to that it just runs. So we'll have to come back and modify this, obviously, because it's not going to be valid for much longer. But let's just start maybe with this and open a PR.
Yeah, let's open a PR. I think we can remove actually the comment, or just a minor thing, but like if we go to the test, we can remove.
Yeah, cool. Good call. And then let's take a look at here. We probably want to just update this.
Yeah, so if we match that value, right, it's going to run that action locally.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to use the local action and pass this path in. And then in this step, we're just running the tests. In this step, we're making sure that it runs properly. So let's do a build. Is it build? It was prepare. Yeah. And then let's add all of these. Let's commit and say feature, I don't know, add lcov path as input.
So I see that in your commit message, you're using feed as a prefix for the commit message. Is that part of semantic pull requests and the conventional commits stuff?
Yep. Good point.
That in this
yes. Yeah, we can add that to the project. I believe it's conventionalcommits.org. Conventionalcommits.org. Yeah, so it's kind of like a nice standard for structuring your commit messages, and you can get nice things for free, like change log generation. And it's also just like a good thing to do because it makes everything a lot more consistent, easy to look at later on as you have like a larger Git history. So yeah, we'll definitely have to enable semantic pull request, which is a bot that actually I think there's an action for this now, because I remember seeing where was it? Somewhere at the bottom. Yeah. So we can use actions. There's a semantic pull request action now. So we'll have to mess around with that later, but it basically just helps enforce that conventional commit standard is maintained in pull requests. So yeah, we'll have to give this a try. I haven't tried it. Have you tried this, Jorge?
I have tried the bot, not the action, but like now that I
Yeah.
know about its existence, like I think I'm
hmm Yeah, we'll have to set that up. So where did we leave off? So I committed. Now let's just push and open this pull request. So we don't
Let's
have
go
any
to the
pull
settings
requests.
here just 1 second to make sure that. Let's go to the preview tab or
Yeah,
here.
yep. This was
That's part of the
formatting.
auto format, right?
Yeah,
This is okay.
we'll see how that works. Yeah. The name, the description. We removed the input of milliseconds. We removed all the outputs. This is just generated code, more generated code. Actually, no, this is now JavaScript that we wrote. So we removed wait, we removed all that stuff and just debug the alcove path. And then in our test, we removed the first 2 tests and then modified the last test to just make sure that it's outputting the path that we pass in. I should have probably used the path here now that I look at it. But
well, we can come back to
yeah,
this.
we'll come back to that. But yeah, does that look good?
Yes.
Let me add, I'll sign myself and I'll add you. And we'll mark this as an enhancement. Yeah, we'll just say like added alcove path as input and debug print the current path.
That works.
Updated tests. So now this should trigger the 2 workflow or the 2 steps in the workflow. Yeah, for the test and for, why is this called units?
I think it was part of what they had. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. I guess they just call it unit tests. So they abbreviate units. I don't know how I feel about that. And this is like the test step. We can rename those, but they both pass, which is cool. So actually, I was looking at this in a different action, and even though we're using the debug API, core.debug, there is, if we look it up, core.debug GitHub Actions. Yeah, so there's like, oh, I'm not seeing any output when I debug, and you actually have to set a secret in the GitHub repo to true in order to see the logs from core.debug. So we can probably do that, right? For, oops,
What's a secret?
It's just a way to keep key values that are like not something you want to check into your repository, and you can access them from your pipeline. So here we can create a new secret and set it to true. And I believe now the next time we run our action, it should, let's see if I restart it. I wonder if I restart it. Let's see. Can I rerun it? Yeah. So that's the unit test.
We printed the path, right? That we passed.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just to make sure.
It's so exciting.
Yeah. The most fun you've ever had. All right, that was at least quick. Hey, here we go. So we can see a bunch of debugs, and then here there's our lcove.info path that we passed in being logged. So that looks like it worked.
Awesome. Let's merge this pull request and let's continue.
We're waiting on your review. In the meantime, let's do some basic stuff like disallow, merge, and rebase so that we have to squash, and let's also automatically delete branches. And we can also set up some rules to make sure that we have to get at least 1 approval in order to merge the PR, and we'll come back to status checks. Actually, let's just enable status checks, right? Yeah. Let's just make sure that they're both good. Anything else?
No, I think that makes sense for now. Let's save the changes. I already merged the pull request, so
All right, cool.
move on.
So let's